right, if you pick up the microphones, I'm told that, yeah, they do work. All right, first things first, ladies and gentlemen. In August of this year, for 63 years, I will be major, which means I'm a major in name only. Have a seat, everybody. I'm Major Garrett, Chief Washington Correspondent for CBS News. Colonel, I want you to record this moment in your mind, because before we start, I want a very hearty round of applause so you can communicate to Cajun's mom and dad that at this place, at this hour, this audience was appreciative for everything Cajun did and represents. Please let his parents know. Thank you, everybody, for that very, very much. I want to introduce everybody. Matt Wilcox, director. I met him outside. I don't know. Colonel, I will never be able to call you Astro. Let's just make that clear right now. Justin Elliott, the colonel. Please round of applause. And Taylor Kavanaugh, the producer. So, Matt, I want to start with you. The what of this amazing movie is clear. I want to know the why. For you, why? Why do this? Why bring this to the Netflix audience, to the world? What drove you to do this?
I think just to start, growing up as a kid, aviation was always, in the bloodstream. My dad would take me out to air shows, and so, getting to feel the jet teams and the afterburner, it kind of leaves a lasting impact. So aviation has always been there as a passion and interest. I think having known Justin for a long time and getting to have opportunities to meet other fighter pilots and people in the aviation world, you can't help but just be so inspired and overwhelmed by the character and the values and the selfishness of all of these individuals. And so I think for me, it was pretty easy on what was driving me to tell the story, and I think the hook was there. Everybody loves high octane and fast moving jets, and so I think early on we knew the lens needed to be pointed and focused at the humans who make up the Thunderbirds, because it was almost a disservice to see this demonstration so beautiful up in the air, but not fully know what goes into that. I always say it's kind of like the reverse of a magic trick. Like, the more you know about what they do, I think the more you are in awe and blown away. So that was really where we dug in.
Taylor, the why for you?
Still kind of processing. I think there's just a deep appreciation and humility to come within miles reach of an Air Force base with cameras. And I think once we, with Matt's lead and just the door was just open just a little bit, that we could just sense 0.5% of what this team did, the responsibility was pretty obvious, to be honest. It wasn't particularly easy, and we're at the total, with immense gratitude to the Netflix team and the higher ground team that, the entire Brock and Michelle and Ethan and Tonya and the whole group, they allowed this. They brought it into flight. They did what Zeke did and pulled this formation into existence. And I think at that point we were flying, and the formula was pretty simple. Matt establishes deep, rich, authentic relationships with the servicemen and women on the team, and we just put cameras in some pretty unique places and just watch Astro's leadership, the team's incredible commitment to doing something, bending physics and putting planes in the sky, and doing it for the purpose of, said many times and never enough, for the inspiration of all Americans and beyond. And the task was easy at that point, and it was brilliant to watch Matt as a filmmaker and a creative work, leading the creative team that told a very immensely challenging story. It's not particularly easy to pull off what was pulled off, but with absolutely incredible immense impact from the Netflix team, who are amazing at every single juncture to bring this to life, and a huge team. It was easy to find that inspiration kind of throughout.
Fun fact, my middle name is Elliott. My son's middle name is Elliott, so Colonel Elliott flows very easily for me. For those in this audience, and anyone who might come across this amazing film, answer the why for why this particular training, this particular approach to avionics is important, beyond the show itself.
So, the why behind this movie for me started before it started, I think, and I think it's important for folks to understand that I was the commander of a different squadron called the 59th that you saw a little bit of there, which was a flight test for a bunch of different fighters. And the pandemic hit right when I was there. And I watched the effects, not just the immediate effects of the pandemic, but the division that ensued in the United States after that pandemic hit. And I think we all saw it, and I think we all felt it. And I think we saw that bullhorn of social media get picked up and just blast us apart as a nation. And as I started to realize two things. One, what Brick had started before me with this reform of this team back to this commitment to excellence. And two, the fact that the Thunderbirds' original mission, the original core of the Thunderbirds back in 1953 was always to bring the country together in tough times. That's why they're red, white, and blue jets. They're not blue and silver. They're not a recruiting tool. It's not about the Air Force at all. It's about the country. It's about uniting. So you put those two things together. The way you unite a nation, the way you create a beacon of excellence in the name of service is with transparency. Transparency does not happen with short form media. It just doesn't. And so we could take all the Instagram shots in the world and it wouldn't do anything compared to actually allowing the American public, and in this case, thanks to Netflix, the world's population to see behind the curtain and see what this team is about. And what I hoped that Matt and Taylor would do, they did. They brought that transparency. They showed the hard parts, parts that are really hard for me to watch. Frankly, when I watch this movie, it's tough. It's like reliving it. But they showed that even at this elite level, even 20 years into flying fighters in the Air Force, it's hard. And if we can just convince everyone to continue to give in whatever their walk of life is, I don't care if it's the 0.5% that serve in the military or the 99.5% that don't, for whatever reason, just find your passion and go after it with that level of commitment. And what an amazing nation we would continue to be. That's the why for me.
Mm-hmm. Your wife says early in the film that there's a 10% casualty rate. Is that true?
It is true. It is true. So at the time when she calculated that, we had about 235 demonstration pilots on the team, 36 commander leaders, so 36 number ones, and then about the same numbers going through the demonstration. It's a little bit muddy to do the exact math because in the early days we didn't have the Solos gumbo. It was terrible. This is Thunderbird 5 and Thunderbird 7, by the way. And she was right. So we've had, unfortunately, just over 20 fatal accidents. And if you look at all of the American demonstration teams, the Blue Angels, the Golden Knights, you have very similar numbers because you're asking these extraordinary people to then perform at a level that is even more extraordinary. And the tax that takes on you puts you at risk inherently. So it's incredible to me that the Air Force is willing to allow us to continue this, which speaks to a much greater mission than just recruiting. Mm-hmm. Right? It's so much more than that.
And Victoria also said something that I found very moving and literary. She said there is a music to the shows. There's a music to how the audience absorbs what goes on and how they react to it. Walk me through that.
It's what it's all about. If you can't connect emotionally with the public, then you're not putting on a show at all. I'll give you my favorite example. If this demonstration was flown by 6 drones, nobody would care. Nobody would watch it. I don't care if it's 3 inches apart. There's no human connection. There's no contact point between the people and the people putting themselves out there and flying it. So it's not really a demonstration at all, is it? This is different. We disable everything automated about the F-16. We fly it manually. We trim full forward. We do things to make it hard, to make it human. to make it mean something. And I think Victoria plays violin in the Las Vegas Symphony. She's a very good musician. That's why you saw her make that analogy. So for her, she saw that. When she saw the demonstration, she saw music. But I do want to highlight something here because Gumbo is sitting here. Gumbo was on Brick's team, and he was on my first team, which is the only reason you don't see him in the movie is because it was focused on Team 23. But Gumbo was on the team that rewrote the Thunderbirds demonstration from scratch. Part of Brick's reform was to completely rewrite the show to make it human, musical, and emotional. And an incredible job done by these guys.
Round of applause for Gumbo. Matt, to pick up on what you said earlier, you grew up with this music. You know what Victoria was talking about, and you brought it to life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a draw to aviation, and I think when there's excellence, I think it's easy to see and recognize excellence. But I think if you can attach an emotion to that, I think part of what was so inspiring for me is that I think we do crave excellence as humans. Whether you may not be a golf fan, but you appreciate what Tiger Woods does, LeBron James or whatever. But I think what was so unique with this team that struck me was this is excellence from everyday Americans. And I think Zeke is a perfect example of that. And to me, it was excellence. It was a pursuit of excellence, but through a team lens where I watched this team, go out 2-3 times a day, put their life on the line. It never got old, but for them to do that, they did not do it for personal credit, self-promotion, fame. They literally poured everything, into what they wear on their sleeve, which is the United States. I think the goal is to inspire us all and make us all proud to stand beneath that flag. And so I think everyone has their own interpretation to what that music is, but you can't help but be inspired and feel those jets when they come by.
And Taylor, I want you to take this and then Matt add to it. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of GoPro stuff in the cockpit, but what I found most arresting and astonishing about this film was when the jets are going and you're at this amazing altitude and amazing speed. There's a camera there that's not from a cockpit. It's another camera. How did that happen?
Filmmaking is such a unique and beautiful art form. There are many beautiful versions of art as they exist, music and on canvas and beyond. But what's really unique about filmmaking is that it's this incredible meeting point of art and science. Inside Matt's brain, throughout multiple years, was an obsession over how can we weave this story and these words and this music and emotion. But then it also came down to Kevin LaRosa, the best civilian pilot, aerial cinematographer, and his team also shot Top Gun Maverick and the amazing Blue Angels film that came out a year prior. And Kevin took the science and the technicality of it and merged it with art in order to display what these amazing jets are doing in the air, piloted by these amazing humans. And that was all Kevin LaRosa. He's the best in the business. And the number of civilians that could come onto Nellis Air Force Base and put a helicopter and navigate and build the trust required to do that is about as close to zero as you can get. But he did, and he did a remarkable job. And we just watched it grow from the very first time that the Air Force allowed that first meeting to happen to when we walked out and put a helicopter a little too close to jets, but close enough that we could provide a perspective that wasn't seen before. So it goes back to not only the hands on the camera, Kevin and his team and Matt, but the litany of people from the Entertainment Air Force office to Netflix and Higher Ground and our production partners at Supper Club. Like, this is an army of people that not only put this show on that we had the honor of showing, but to make this film as well. And you saw a bit and piece of that in the credits. It takes a whole squadron to do.
Matt, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think to keep up with this team is really challenging. They move at an ops tempo, which is lightning fast, and so I think from the beginning we really had to build trust with the squadron and be in positions that we could be there without being there. And we'll forever be indebted to Astro and the Thunderbirds to allow us to be a part of their process. And it really was like we kind of became part of the team. I remember there were times where Primo or somebody would get a move and you would start to run out, to go give him a hug or a high five. They realized he had to get back and behind the camera. So I think there was kind of this beautiful synergy that existed between the two teams, but the Aerials were just a part of that. And I think what's unique about the Thunderbirds, we're not really gifted any extra sorties to say, oh, could we do this shot a little bit better or go a little bit higher? And so, as Kevin LaRoche would say, it's a crawl, walk, run, and it took months of integration for him to get to know Astro, to sit in the briefing rooms, to understand the demonstration. And as much as these pilots have to trust each other to be in the right spot, well, they had to trust Kevin LaRosa to be in the right spot too. So there's a lot of beautiful themes of trust that I think happen, and we wouldn't have been able to make the movie without that.
And Colonel Elliott, I want to follow up on that because that sounds like an extraordinary aspect to this. Not only did you, first of all, did you have any hesitation about this transparency, them being there all the time and seeing the harder moments, seeing the things that don't work, the failures, Primo struggles, and then secondarily, how did you get to that level of trust? Because the blind trust is your team, and then you're adding this variable, this very conspicuous, potentially dangerous variable to that trust matrix.
There was scaffolding in place, but not much, because very quickly, Taylor and Matt and their team showed us who they were. They proved that they were able to sit in the background and watch and not interfere and understand what we were doing. That is so important. These guys dropped, I think this is important to understand this, before Netflix bought this film, they were completely out on a limb. They were running on their own budget, trying to make this happen. That is a huge amount of risk to take as a filmmaker. They were spending money, they were spending time, lots of time that they could have dedicated to their sports films and other documentaries. And so that showed us a lot about their character, their willingness to step out and say, hey, I'm doing this. And maybe, just maybe, it's gonna work out. A lot of life is like that, right? You take a lot of risk, you put yourself out there and it's probably not gonna work. And then eventually, if you keep doing that, maybe, just maybe it's gonna work. So they showed us that, and that built that trust. And if you don't mind, sir, I gotta take the opportunity to say thank you, because you got to see, not just to you guys, right? I think we've explored the challenges that these guys dealt with. I wanna just take a second to, you saw some of the leadership challenges that you deal with as Thunderbird 1, right? That's just a squadron command. Above that, you have group command of multiple squadrons. Then you've got wing command, which is in charge of, for example, all of Nellis Air Force Base. If you keep going, you can be in charge of a numbered Air Force, which is a 2-star general. If you keep going, it goes up and up. You'd be in charge of the entire Air Force, right? If you go up one more than that, then you're the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's as high as it gets. Okay, now I want you to imagine the responsibility being on that man's shoulders right there, sitting behind us. When we asked, to put a helicopter with a giant camera in the middle of that high-speed demonstration on the busiest fighter base in the world. And, sir, thank you for the trust. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I know how much risk you took. To make that possible.
It was said early in the film that you have to divorce yourself from your survival instinct to do the work that you do. Can you explain that to me?
They're all laughing because they know. I'm sure General Hammond is laughing as well. There's a moment, and I think for most of us, it's in the diamond roll. The first time that you try the diamond roll, which is the one where you go upside down as a 4-ship diamond. And, until that point in your life, you've had this thing called the 5,000-foot floor. You're not allowed below that in a fighter jet. That's bad. That's getting into risky territory. That's a mile off the ground. The top of the Thunderbird loops is about 5,000 feet. That's the sky part. The ground part is about 100 feet. So you are orders of magnitude below any place that you've ever been told it's okay to go upside down. And so in that diamond roll, which is usually one of the first things you learn, you have this moment where you're upside down with a force ship inches off of your wing, and you realize, you glance at your altimeter and you realize that you're just about 2,500 feet off the ground, and you're upside down and you're diving. And in that dive, you have to finish the roll. So you can't pull, you can't roll upside down and get out of that situation. You just have to continue that gradual turn all the way through that vector that's really starting to look scary, and hope that the roll rate that you set way back 270 degrees ago was the right roll rate to get out of that before you hit the ground. That is the moment. I bet you it's the same for Reggie. I bet you it's the same for anyone who's flown the demonstration, where you realize, like, okay, I cannot think like a person that wants to live. I have to just be a robot for these moments and just absolutely focus on the next 5 seconds, 1 second at a time.
It's amazing. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we're a little bit over, but I could honestly sit here for a very, very long time. But I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I want to end with this, because near the end of the film, it is said, and it is proven true, that in the re-examination of this team and its tactics or its maneuvering, closer is safer. What appears riskier is actually safer. Counterintuitive, but applicable in a lot of aspects of life. So Matt, I want to start with you. Let's go all the way down the line. How you absorb that, how you think that resonates, not just through this film, but through other things.
I think for me, what was so inspiring was to look at this team day in, day out. We try the best in the film to portray how hard it is, but the demand of what they go through is really unfathomable on a day-to-day, a week-to-week, and month-to-month. I think what was so inspiring for me was to look at leaders like Brick, who already are against all they can handle, but he took the time to dig into the squadron and figured out a way that, hey, maybe we can do this better. And so I think that is, the most inspiring for me, was this ongoing forward lean of this team from 1953 has passed down tradecraft and left it better than when they left it better than when they started. I think that is just such a beautiful pursuit amidst hard things, to continue to want to find ways to improve. So as Astro said in the movie, success is at the next squadron. We'll take it and run with it from there.
Colonel Elliott.
I think it's important to realize that what you just saw there is the result of 70 years of tradecraft passed down generation to generation. One of the most striking things for me was coming out of test pilot school not too long before going to the Thunderbirds, where we are taught about the Thunderbirds. We're taught the why behind some of the flight control inputs, some of the disabling of systems. It's all taught at a technical level. The Thunderbirds are not taught any of that, but they're taught via tradecraft, passed down generation to generation, what happens to work, like trimming full forward. They merged. The education part merged with the training part. It was fascinating to see those two things come together, and it tells you the power of generational tradecraft. It's very important. It's a very important part of our culture. One of the things that comes with that is cultural waves. You're going to have ups and downs as a team. You're going to have ups and downs as a state, as a nation, as a globe. And I think we see that, right? There are cultural waves through all of us, but it's important that we continue to endure through that and continue to push ourselves harder, closer, if you will, to always say, kind of like Brick said at the end of that, like, try to realize that perfection and always keep in mind that the best version of us, the best version of the team, the country, is the one in front of us. If we work towards that, we're doing the right thing.
Taylor, as a creative, when you hear riskier can be safer, how do you process that?
Well, I think with the honor of just observing what has been happening in the squadron for 70 years, and what Astro and this incredible team pulled off, and what it says and represents about 500,000 uniformed servicemen and women in the Air Force completely, and maybe beyond that. I think that an elite institution that can go yet higher is a really powerful sentiment and statement. And as I watched, humbly supporting Matt and filling gaps and making things happen from time to time, there's a duality, I think, that can exist sometimes with that responsibility of the most elite organization on planet Earth, responsible for the livelihoods and security of millions, if not more, that the power of that collective institution is awe-inspiring when it is at its best, with transparency and truth and the ability to do hard things, and and through that. But there's also an interesting duality that exists that I watched Astro go through as an individual, that I watched Matt go through as an individual, that also it cannot be understated the power of one individual, Brick or Astro or any one person, to create immense change that actually has little to do with the institution that they sit and rely on, but everything to do with the care and the compassion for people, the drive to push the jets and everything yet higher. So when we talk about and think about that responsibility of this is a more powerful mechanism that can also be riskier to pull the jets closer, it's only through that sort of dual approach that it even becomes possible to consider doing something as challenging as taking the most elite flying institution in the world and trying to say, can it be better? Can we go higher and faster and closer? It's only through those two avenues that you can even approach an answer on that.
This audience wants to applaud these folks, and you will in a second, but I just want to say one thing. When I was asked to do this, I jumped at the opportunity, and here's why. I've never served in the military, but I've been a journalist my whole life. I believe that is a form of public service, and I value it tremendously. I also value and cherish the First Amendment of the Constitution, which allows me to do the work that I do. But I want everyone in this room to understand, and I've said this publicly before, and I can't say it too many times, the reason I'm allowed to do what I do, and I'm protected by the Constitution, is because we have a military that protects the Constitution and the country that serves to live by that Constitution. And I never forget that. That's why I'm honored to be here tonight. So, the round of applause, Matt, Elliott, and Kavanaugh. Thanks for being here. Thanks for that. Let's have a wonderful night.